Hey everyone, right now we're in Washington State checking out the beautiful forests. The trees are so nice and tall and almost everything is healthy looking and green. Then I'm gonna go down the road and show a recent forest fire and how it girdled all the trees into dying just because what was on the ground burned, but it didn't make it up into the trees. So we're just gonna look into the woods and see how these fires start up. When it's dry out during a drought, you see all this stuff on the ground here. Look at that, how dry this is. I can dig down a couple inches and find nothing. It's just crunchy, dry pine needles, little twigs, sticks, branches. I can see how a fire spreads on the floor very, very fast. But there isn't a lot here, so it goes through pretty fast. The trees are all green, very wet. So when the fire goes through, it has heat on the trunks for just a little bit to kill the bark, essentially girdling them. Girdling is something you can actually cut, peel the bark around, then the whole tree dies. Some people do that for firewood, and then you don't have to worry about it rotting because it's up in the air. Well, the fire does that. Whole tree top dries, but also the fire, it can sometimes reach all these dead branches. These branches are dead because they don't get sunlight, and the tree just rejects them. And eventually, years in the future, when they become as massive as these, they have already rotted and fallen off. But the fire sometimes gets up inside these, burning them. But a lot of times it doesn't continue up into the greenery because it's just so hard to burn. So that's why a lot of the forests we're about to walk in that have recently burned, you're going to see it looks all pruned and easy to see around and stuff. And we'll also get to check out how the firefighters in some areas knocked down every giant tree near the road back into the forest, watered it so it can't jump across the street. And then we'll check out at the end of the video some areas and why the trees probably won't recover without major help. Right now I'm checking out an area that had a recent forest fire this year. This is my first time this week ever visiting Washington State, and I gotta say, compared to where I live, the forests here seem extremely healthy and extremely green. For the past few years, the trees in my area look awful, but everything around here seems to be pretty green except what burns. Across the road here, you see all the trees are dead because the forest fire basically just sticks to the forest floor. It girdles all the trees with extreme heat. Then the hot summer comes by, removes all the moisture, so now it's ready for an even bigger fire. And then once all this stuff burns down to nothing, it just becomes a grassy hill, and the trees have a extremely hard time ever growing back from that. Because with these steep mountains at high elevation, the snowfall can be kind of extreme, and avalanches prevent any seedlings from surviving. Like a lot of the area that I just drove through, a couple 100 miles of it, it's just grassy hills with houses on them. But I can tell they used to be forests not too long ago. I can still see many of the burnt logs laying down all over the grassy hills. I can still smell a lot of fire. There's a pretty big one that's only 10% contained, not too many miles away. It's good to see the trees right here seem to be very healthy. But as soon as we get a little bit away from the road, because I'm guessing they probably watered next to the road, that's why it's pretty minimal. Once we get up here, everything is dead. And you can see up top, it's just dead pine needles. The flames weren't big enough to climb the majority of these trees. See, a good amount of this was already cut up, probably to prevent it from crossing the road. This was most likely done by firefighters, notching the trees, pushing them over, because they don't want them falling across the road, because look how green that is. Nothing burned. The only reason you see dead areas is because avalanches prevent anything from growing there. But this definitely happened earlier this year based on the growth here. Some animals' den. Yeah, this was a fire earlier this year. You can see they cut everything. That had to have been to prevent it from crossing. And the sad truth is, a lot of these aren't going to be growing back. Let's go up to a few trees. This one right here was hollow, very vulnerable, and broke. But even trees like this, you see how it didn't completely get burned on the bottom? It's still alive a little bit, but that tree's definitely not going to make it. The trees that didn't completely get girdled are still alive, just a little bit. The rest of them are all dead. And now, what the issue is, you have all this kindling here. Within the next year or two, this entire area is going to start growing grass. And as soon as that grass starts turning brown and drying out, it's an even bigger fire hazard. The next sweep of fire will come by, remove every tree, and then it'll just be a grassy hill, because fires keep becoming more and more common. The majority of them are accidental, but it's still going to happen. See over here, these smaller trees. That one right there, only half of it got burned, but because they're small, the extreme heat, it got it. These trees are dead and not coming back. Even this one right here, which still is, for the most part, green up there, probably won't survive it. It is a possibility that the dead bark will fall off, like you already see forming here. You see in here the sap coming out. It's possible this dead part might fall off because it's already trying to heal. If this falls off, it'll try to start healing over that like any other injury. Doesn't look pretty around here. These areas are a bit depressing to look at, especially after spending a good amount of time over the past week. I've been out here looking at abandoned train tunnels and stuff, and these are some of the most lush forests I've ever seen in my life. Where I'm from in New England, I remember the forest used to always look really nice. All it took was 2 years of drought, and they're extremely horrible. But we have yet to have fires. It just amazes me that around here, a green forest can burn down. I think a lot of the forests out here, the reason they stay greener than what I'm used to, my terrain, is because the ground is just richer. And these trees, for the most part, are bigger. Most of the forests I usually hang out in are logged every 40 years, meaning they're not as established, they're not as drought tolerant, don't have as good of root systems. Many of the trees out here are taller than I'm used to seeing. If you look up on the hill right now, you can see where a forest fire was probably just a couple years ago. I say a couple years because I can see the leafy thickets are already a couple feet high. Right in front of us, looks like really nothing grew back, just a bunch of the trees survived it. This is all forest fire smoke. Can't even see some of the mountains. Can't see the lake either. You're supposed to be able to overlook it here. You can tell where it is, but you really can't see the water. Pretty smoky out. Check out this moss. It looks really good. Huge Douglas fir trees. Look at the size of that Douglas fir over here. And that stump, that one must have been huge. The moss on these trees is incredible. This is one really big hollowed out tree. It looks like years ago it had some kind of injury and it tried to heal around its... But the majority of the tree fell off and is dead. It's got some sides though still going. Look at this hole. I could literally go inside this, but I'm scared of what kind of creature could be in. Wow. See way up inside it. Beautiful bluish green water and a bunch of wildfire smoke in the sky. Check it out. This other tree right next to it also is pretty hollow. I don't see any animal tracks, thankfully, but a lot of space in there.